By midnight the restaurant was a different world. The glow from the dining room dimmed, leaving pockets of shadow. The rain had started again, soft against the windows. In the kitchen, voices murmured, low, urgent. Ethan stepped quietly into the narrow pantry and switched off the small overhead light. Only the bluish glow from his phone remained. He positioned himself near the thin plaster wall separating the pantry from the kitchen and held his breath. The first words were muffled, then clear enough to freeze him. Marcus's voice. Hey there viewer. If you're wondering how things got this intense, you've missed the beginning. Go check out our previous story first, that's where everything started, and it'll make this part even more thrilling. But if you've already seen it, then welcome back, let's continue. He drinks it every night, same glass, same bottle. Dana, the Merlot. Vintage 87. He keeps it in that rack, third shelf. Luis, you sure it'll work fast? Marcus, trust me. He'll finish the glass before it even hits him. Silence. Then a faint rustle of papers. Tasha's nervous tone, and the documents. The transfer. Dana, already signed. Just needs a death certificate to make it official. Ethan's hand trembled so hard the phone nearly slipped from his grip. He forced himself to stay still. Every muscle screamed to run, but he knew that one sound could end him. Then came the sentence that turned fear into terror. Marcus said, and if anyone asks how it happened, it's on Ethan. The quiet one. The one who's always around the drinks. Perfect story. Ethan's stomach knotted. He felt sick, trapped between four walls and a truth too dangerous to reveal. They were going to kill Caldwell and blame him. The room seemed to shrink around him, the shelves closing in like jaws. He opened his phone's voice recorder. A red light blinked faintly in the dark. Each word from the kitchen poured into it, the plan, the laughter, the casual cruelty. His pulse thudded in his ears, matching the steady rhythm of the rain. Dana's voice softened. We do it Friday. He always stays late to finish his accounts. We'll toast to the future, then it's over. The sound of a cork popping made Ethan flinch. He imagined their faces, the excitement, the greed, the unspoken relief of seeing their tyrant gone. But beneath their plan he heard something else, emptiness. The kind that makes people mistake power for peace. When their voices faded and footsteps moved toward the back exit, Ethan stayed hidden. Minutes dragged into half an hour before he dared to breathe normally. The phone kept recording, capturing only the slow drip of a leaking pipe. Finally, he stopped it and played back a few seconds. Their voices were faint but clear enough, proof that could save a life or end his own. He tucked the phone into his apron and leaned against the wall, trying to steady his breath. His reflection in the small freezer door looked ghost pale, eyes wide and hollow. He couldn't confront them. Not yet. If he did, they'd know. Marcus was strong, Dana ruthless, Luis easily led. They would silence him before Caldwell ever took another sip of wine. So he planned in silence. Tomorrow he would act normal. Smile. Serve. Pretend ignorance until he found a way to protect himself and warn Caldwell without suspicion. He pushed open the pantry door. The kitchen was empty, lights dimmed to a dull orange. Pots hung like silent witnesses above the prep tables. He crossed the floor carefully, half expecting one of them to step out of the shadows. Only the hum of the refrigerator greeted him. In the dining room, a few candles still flickered, their wax pooling like blood on the white tablecloths. He blew them out one by one. Each puff of smoke curled upward, ghost-like, before vanishing into the air. When he reached the bar, he paused by the wine rack, the one Marcus had mentioned. Third shelf, left side. The bottles gleamed in neat rows, identical at a glance, but one label looked slightly damp. Ethan touched it and felt a sticky residue near the cork. His stomach turned. They'd already prepared it. He didn't move the bottle, that would give him away. Instead, he wiped his hand on his apron and stepped back. The faint jazz tune still looping from the speakers felt wrong now, too soft for a place planning a murder. He glanced toward Caldwell's office door, its glass panel dark. The man had left hours ago, unaware that death was already waiting for him inside his own restaurant. Ethan felt a pang of pity, not admiration, not loyalty, just the basic ache of watching another human walk blindly into danger. The clock read 1:23 a.m. The world outside was asleep, but Ethan couldn't leave yet. He needed a plan of his own. He walked back to the pantry, grabbed a notebook used for inventory, and wrote a single line across the first page: "They plan to poison him through the Merlot. I have proof." He dated it, folded the page, and hid it behind the flour sacks. Insurance. When he finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The alley smelled of wet concrete and stale wine. He drew in a long breath, trying to wash the stench of fear from his lungs. Somewhere deep inside, resolve replaced panic. Tomorrow he would serve them as if nothing had happened. He would smile when Dana teased him, laugh at Marcus's crude jokes, refill their glasses with steady hands. But every move, every glance would be calculated. He would watch. Record. Collect. Because now he understood the rules: silence was survival, observation his only weapon. As he locked the restaurant door, the metal bolt clicked like a gun being loaded. The streetlight threw his shadow long across the pavement. For a fleeting moment, he saw two versions of himself in that silhouette, the waiter everyone ignored and the witness no one suspected. He turned away and began the walk home. The night was thick with the scent of rain and betrayal, and in his pocket, the phone felt heavier than it should, a small, humming vault of truth. Tomorrow the show would go on, but behind every smile at the Velvet Fork, the countdown had already begun. The sky cracked open long before the first scream. Rain pounded the glass windows of the Velvet Fork with unrelenting fury, sheets of water blurring the view outside. Each thunderclap rolled through the building like an omen. Inside, the restaurant glowed faintly, a fragile pocket of warmth against the storm. It was nearly closing time, and the dining room stood empty except for the soft reflection of lightning sliding across the polished tables. Ethan moved quietly behind the counter, drying the last set of glasses. His motions were slow, deliberate. His thoughts were not. They raced, tangled, looping back to the moment earlier that afternoon when he'd opened the wine rack, switched the bottles, and prayed his hands wouldn't tremble enough to give him away. Now, every sound in the restaurant echoed differently. The storm outside wasn't just noise, it was warning. The hum of the lights, the steady tick of the clock, the low hiss from the kitchen, everything felt alive, waiting for something to happen. In the back, Marcus and Dana worked side by side. They didn't speak much, but their silence said enough. Dana stood by the bar, her fingers tapping against the stem of a wine glass, polished to gleaming perfection. Marcus wiped down the counter beside her, his jaw tight, his eyes darting toward the office door at the far end of the hallway. Behind that door sat Mr. Caldwell, the man they planned to kill. He was still awake, poring over receipts and invoices like a man counting his sins. His lamp threw a cone of yellow light across stacks of paper. Occasionally, the faint scratch of his pen could be heard between thunderclaps. Ethan glanced at the clock. 11:32. 15 minutes. The air had grown thick, humid with tension and the smell of wet earth wafting in through the open vent. Ethan pretended to rearrange cutlery, but his eyes stayed fixed on the bar. Dana had begun pouring the wine. She chose the bottle carefully, lifting it with exaggerated care, the one she thought was poisoned. The liquid shimmered dark red under the dim light, rich and beautiful, deadly only in her imagination now. "Make it neat," Marcus whispered. His voice was rough, almost trembling. "I know what I'm doing," she snapped, though her hand shook slightly as she poured. Ethan's heart pounded. He could feel the pulse in his fingertips. The plan was in motion, theirs and his. Everything depended on seconds now. The bottle touched the counter with a soft clink. Dana straightened, exhaled, and forced a smile that looked stretched too tight. Marcus gave her a curt nod. Together, they watched as she picked up the glass, balancing it carefully on a silver tray. Ethan's mouth felt dry. He wiped the same spot on the counter for the 10th time, pretending not to notice her. The thunder growled above. The minute hand crept forward. 11:47. Dana walked toward the office, heels clicking in perfect rhythm with the ticking clock. Ethan watched her disappear down the narrow hallway, her reflection gliding across the glass panes. For a moment, he saw Marcus smirk, confident that everything was falling into place. In the office, light spilled through the frosted window. A shadow moved, Caldwell's. The door opened slightly. Dana's voice floated out, smooth and rehearsed. "One last glass before the storm swallows the night, sir." A pause, then Caldwell's gruff chuckle. "You always know how to end the day right, Dana." Her silhouette stepped inside. The door clicked shut. Ethan couldn't see them now, only faint movement through the glass, her hand offering the drink, his reaching to take it. Every muscle in Ethan's body tightened. He stood frozen behind the counter, eyes locked on the door, breath shallow. Lightning flashed, lighting the restaurant white for a heartbeat. Then darkness. Then thunder again, louder, closer. A second passed. Then another. Then the sound came, the soft clink of a glass being set down. Ethan waited. The silence stretched thin, unbearable. Then Caldwell's voice drifted through the hallway, faint but clear enough to reach him. "Excellent flavor tonight. What's different?" Nothing happened. No choking, no gasp. Just the quiet sound of a man savoring his drink. Ethan exhaled slowly, a soundless prayer leaving his chest. The office door opened. Dana emerged first, her expression flickering between confusion and dread. Marcus took a step forward. "Is it done?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Caldwell followed behind her, wiping his mouth with a napkin, brows furrowed. "You people act like you've seen a ghost," he said. His tone was half amusement, half suspicion. Marcus's face drained of color. His eyes darted toward the bottle, then at Ethan. Something sharp crossed his expression, realization creeping in. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady, quiet enough to make everyone lean in to hear. "Maybe you should check the camera footage, sir." The words cut through the air like a blade. Caldwell froze. Dana's mouth fell open. Marcus moved a fraction, instinctively reaching for the counter. Outside, a flash of blue light splashed across the rain-slicked windows, followed by the distant wail of sirens. Ethan didn't move. He kept his gaze fixed on Marcus, whose confusion turned to rage in an instant. "What did you do?" Marcus hissed, voice shaking. Caldwell turned to Ethan, eyes narrowing. "What's going on here?" Another flash of red and blue. Tires screeched outside, doors slammed. The restaurant filled with the echo of approaching footsteps. Ethan spoke again, calm as if reciting an order. "They were going to kill you, sir. Check the camera." Marcus lunged before anyone could react, the sound of his shoes slipping on the wet floor cutting through the storm. The tray clattered to the ground, wine splattering like blood across the tiles. Ethan stumbled back as Marcus's hand caught his collar. The man's eyes were wild, teeth clenched. "You set us up." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. The door burst open with a crash. Police flooded in, voices shouting, commands colliding with the thunder. "Hands up. Don't move." Marcus froze mid-motion, his grip tightening before finally letting go. Dana screamed as two officers pulled her back. Luis and Tasha, drawn by the chaos, stumbled out from the kitchen only to be pinned to the floor seconds later. Caldwell stood still, eyes darting from Ethan to the officers, confusion battling comprehension. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the chaos. Marcus pressed against the counter, his reflection fractured in the shattered glass, Dana crying, her lipstick smeared across her chin, the officer's boots glistening with rainwater. Ethan remained near the bar, chest heaving, heart thundering in rhythm with the storm. He hadn't moved since the police arrived. The restaurant, once a temple of order, had become a crime scene. Caldwell turned slowly toward him. "You knew." Ethan nodded. "I switched the bottle." The old man stared at him for a long moment. Something softened in his face, not gratitude exactly, but something close. He looked away, murmuring almost to himself, "I should have seen it." Outside, lightning split the sky again. Officers escorted the four conspirators into the rain, their shouts fading beneath the storm's roar. The red and blue lights painted the restaurant walls in violent flashes, as if the building itself was bleeding out the night's madness. Ethan sank into a chair, his body trembling from the release. The storm outside began to ease, the thunder rolling farther away. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. The restaurant was quiet again. The only sound left was the faint drip of spilled wine sliding down the counter, red streaks running toward the edge before falling, one by one, into silence. The Velvet Fork sat in silence, its golden lights gone cold behind police tape. Days had passed since the storm, but the echoes of that night still clung to the walls like smoke. The papers called it the Velvet Fork poison plot, bold letters, splashed across every front page. The photos showed the restaurant's grand facade, soaked in rain and flashing lights, a stage where betrayal had played its final act. Inside Ethan's apartment, the world felt smaller. The blinds were half drawn, letting in slivers of gray morning. A cup of untouched coffee cooled beside him on the table. He hadn't been able to sleep since that night. Even when his eyes closed, the images returned, the flash of police lights, Marcus's wild face, Dana's scream, the wine spilling like blood across the floor. He told himself he'd done the right thing, that exposing them had been necessary, but righteousness did not quiet the mind. Silence had weight now. Every creak of the apartment felt like a reminder that peace comes with a price. His phone buzzed with messages he didn't open, reporters, investigators, curious friends from work. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, but Ethan had no interest in retelling it. He'd lived it once, that was enough. A knock came at the door, sharp and steady. For a second, his heart lurched, a reflex from too many nights of waiting for trouble. He rose slowly, opened the door, and there stood Mr. Caldwell. The old man looked smaller than before, his shoulders less rigid, his hair disheveled in a way Ethan had never seen. In his hand, he held a newspaper folded neatly under his arm. The headline stared up at them both, "Waiter exposes poison plot at local fine dining restaurant." "May I?" Caldwell asked, his tone softer than it had ever been. Ethan stepped aside. The man entered, looking around the modest apartment like he was walking through unfamiliar territory. He sat without waiting to be offered a chair, exhaled deeply, and rubbed his temples. "You know," Caldwell said, voice rough, "I read every article they printed about it, but none of them tell what it felt like in that moment. To look at people you trusted and realize they were ready to watch you die." He paused, eyes distant. "That's a kind of horror I wouldn't wish on anyone." Ethan said nothing. He didn't know what comfort sounded like anymore. Caldwell looked up at him. "You kept this place alive, Ethan. If not for you, the Velvet Fork would be another obituary in the paper. You risked your life for a man who barely remembered your last name." Ethan met his gaze. "I did what I had to." "You did more than that." Caldwell leaned forward, the faintest trace of a smile touching his face. "I need you back there. Not as a waiter. As something more." The words hung in the air. For a moment, Ethan wasn't sure he'd heard right. Caldwell continued. "The restaurant will reopen next month. The inspectors cleared us, and the investors are still on board. But I can't run it alone anymore. I need someone who knows what truth looks like when everyone else is pretending. Assistant manager. The position's yours, if you'll take it. Ethan hesitated. The title sounded heavy. It came with ghosts attached. Yet something inside him stirred, not pride, exactly, but the quiet sense that maybe, after everything, this was his way to reclaim what had been poisoned. He nodded once. I'll come back. Caldwell rose, offered a hand. Ethan took it. The handshake was brief but steady, a silent exchange of respect. As the door closed behind the old man, the apartment felt lighter for the first time in weeks. When the Velvet Fork reopened, spring had begun to soften the city. The banners outside fluttered in a warm breeze. The glass doors gleamed, spotless, reflecting a new sign in crisp lettering. Under new management. Owner, Richard Caldwell. Assistant manager, Ethan Ward. Ethan stood at the entrance before the first shift, adjusting the cuff of his new suit. The fabric felt strange against his skin, too fine for someone who had spent years in an apron. The street smelled of rain and lavender from the florist next door. Inside, the restaurant looked unchanged to the casual eye, the same polished tables, the same quiet jazz drifting through the speakers. But Ethan noticed the subtler shifts. The air was cleaner. The laughter of the new staff sounded different, untainted. No whispers in corners, no secret glances when backs were turned. Yet even amid this peace, he carried an edge of unease. His reflection in the mirrored wall seemed older, more cautious. The memory of that night had not left, it had simply gone quiet, waiting behind his eyes. He sometimes wondered if trust itself was a luxury he could no longer afford. As he walked through the dining room, conversations hushed. The new employees, a handful of servers and cooks who had replaced the arrested ones, whispered among themselves. Some nodded respectfully. Others simply watched, curious about the man who'd uncovered a murder plot and still chose to return to the scene. Ethan ignored the murmurs. He checked the settings on each table, corrected a crooked napkin, adjusted a wine glass by a fraction of an inch. The habits of precision still anchored him. When he reached the bar, he paused. A row of unopened bottles gleamed under the lights. His hand hovered briefly over a familiar label, Merlot, Vintage 87. He felt the ghost of that night in the chill of the glass. Caldwell emerged from the office, dressed impeccably, a trace of humility lingering in his posture. "Place looks good," he said. "You've got an eye for detail." "Learn from the best," Ethan replied, almost smiling. Caldwell chuckled, a sound that carried no edge this time. "Let's keep it that way." For a few moments, they stood together in silence, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the murmur of the city beyond the windows. The restaurant felt alive again, though beneath its beauty lay scars invisible to the untrained eye. As the first customers arrived, Ethan greeted them with calm professionalism. No tremor in his voice, no trace of the fear that once ruled him. The rhythm of service returned, plates gliding, wine pouring, laughter growing. But beneath the polished surface, Ethan's eyes stayed sharp, always watching. By the end of the night, the restaurant glowed again, soft and golden as it used to. The last table left. The staff began cleaning up, their chatter light and innocent. Caldwell gave Ethan a nod of approval before heading to his office. Ethan lingered alone by the bar. The clock ticked past midnight. He loosened his tie, exhaled, and stared through the window at the city lights reflecting on the wet pavement. In their shimmer, he saw everything, the chaos, the storm, the betrayal, and the fragile order. By the time the last customer left, the restaurant was spotless. The Velvet Fork was safe now, rebuilt from the ashes of greed. The chairs stood neatly in place. Yet as he looked at his own reflection, the soft music he saw the faint flicker of something restless behind his eyes. A shadow the night away from knowing how close darkness always stands to the light. The sign on the glass door shimmered faintly under the streetlights, under new management. The words still felt strange to him, but he'd grown used to their quiet promise. He walked toward the center of the room, where a single candle burned on the last table. Its light cast long, trembling shadows that danced across the polished floor. The flame bent slightly each time the air shifted, throwing fragments of gold against the walls. Everything looked peaceful now, as if the storm that once shattered this place had been a dream. He stopped by the table and looked around, the gleam of wine glasses, the scent of lemon oil on the wooden counters, the faint echo of footsteps already gone. Nothing in the room betrayed what it had been before, a cage for secrets, a stage for deceit. Yet in the stillness, Ethan could almost hear it, the ghosts of whispered plans, the sound of laughter turning sharp behind closed doors. He reached out and adjusted the candle slightly, the wax warm against his fingers. Its flame swayed, steadying again, small but stubborn. The restaurant was his responsibility now, a second life he hadn't asked for but accepted. And yet, beneath the calm, a question lingered, one he never spoke aloud. Could a place so drenched in fear ever truly be clean again? He turned toward the window, his shoes quiet against the tiled floor. The same window where he had once stood, listening through the glass, hearing words that had changed everything. Back then, the night had been a monster, heavy rain, angry thunder, the air thick with betrayal. Tonight, the rain returned, but softly. It brushed against the glass like a sigh, each drop gentle, patient, cleansing. Ethan stood still, watching the streaks of water slide down the pane. The city lights outside blurred into ribbons of gold and silver. He could see his reflection superimposed on the storm, a man older than his years, eyes steady but haunted by memory. The faint rhythm of the rain matched his heartbeat, quiet and even. He whispered to himself, the words barely leaving his lips. Some people serve for tips. I served for truth. The sound hung in the air, simple and final. The candle behind him flickered, its light fading, its last breath trembling against the draft. For a moment, the reflection in the glass seemed to split, the Ethan who once obeyed in silence and the one who had dared to act. When the flame finally died, his image vanished into the darkness. He stood there for a while, letting the dark settle. The rain kept falling, the sound soothing now, almost kind. But somewhere in the quiet, another sound stirred, a faint creak, a whisper of movement. It might have been the wind slipping through the vents, or something else entirely. Ethan didn't turn. He'd learned that some echoes are better left unanswered. The air cooled as the last trace of candle smoke rose toward the ceiling. The restaurant was wrapped in stillness again, the kind that comes after truth has been spoken. Justice had taken its due, leaving behind only silence, the clean, heavy silence that follows a reckoning. He walked back toward the door, his steps soft, unhurried. Each click of his shoes felt like punctuation to the story that had begun in this very room, the quiet waiter, the plotting co-workers, the night of the storm. All of it led here, to peace, fragile but real. Before leaving, he turned once more toward the dining room. The tables gleamed faintly in the low light, waiting for morning. He could almost see the past superimposed on the present, the same space, two worlds layered atop each other, one full of deceit, the other rebuilt on truth. He placed a hand on the door handle and paused. The rain whispered against the glass again, and for a heartbeat, he thought he heard laughter. Soft, distant, the kind that once hid danger behind its charm. But it faded quickly, leaving only the steady hum of the night. Not tonight, he murmured. Not ever again. He locked the door, the sound firm and final. The key turned with a clean click, sealing the restaurant in its silence. Outside, the street shimmered under the rain, the pavement glistening like wet glass. He stepped out into it, pulling his coat tight around him. Behind him, the velvet fork stood still, a monument of light and shadow, of what people are capable of when greed turns to hunger and silence turns to strength. The rain fell harder for a moment, washing the last traces of the day away. As he walked down the street, thunder rumbled far in the distance, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't threatening anymore, just a reminder that storms never truly end, they only move on. Ethan didn't look back. He didn't need to. The restaurant would stand on its own now, cleansed but marked, alive but changed. He had done his part, served his truth, and earned his peace. The night closed around him, gentle and vast. Somewhere behind him, a candle that had burned to nothing left a thin wisp of smoke curling upward, a final sigh from a place that had seen too much. In that silence, between the last echo of thunder and the whisper of rain, the story ended where it began, in quiet, in light fading into dark, and in the simple, enduring truth that evil doesn't vanish, it waits. But for this night, at least, justice had been served. The faint clinking of glass lingers, followed by one last roll of thunder, soft, distant, and done. Let me know your thoughts. Can you pretend as Ethan did for the right reasons? And if you've made it to this point, then it's certain that you did enjoy this story. But honestly, I want to know if you've experienced this kind of manipulation before or someone close to you have before. And if chilling and endearing stories are your thing, make sure you subscribe so you could get the notification immediately another one comes up. Good night.